This might actually be the worst thing to happen to America in recent history. It's October 13th, 2006, and President Bush just signed the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act. This piece of paper was supposed to be a preemptive strike, meant to halt the ancient vice of gambling before it could take over the digital world and stop a gold rush before it could even begin.
I did like a 10-leg parlay. If I hit this one for real, I'll be good.
23 years old, and I've been gambling on sports since I was 12. It has ruined every aspect of my life, shattered everything.
Yeah, note how I said supposed to. Because the law had a fatal error. It banned most online gambling except for one carve-out, something that was deemed completely harmless at the time, the so-called skills-based fantasy betting.
The gateway drug.
Fill out your bracket.
Yeah.
Seems innocuous, seems harmless.
It's not gambling, but it's not gambling.
Right.
As you'll already know, based on the millions of ads that we're all swamped with today, that little loophole was exploited to its absolute fullest. Combined with several clever but ruthless business moves we'll get into shortly, this all paved the way for the behemoth we now know as modern sports betting. In 2024, Americans wagered nearly $148 billion on sports alone, which is more than any other form of gambling. It's bigger than casinos and even bigger than poker. And actually, it's even more than 3 times the combined annual revenue of the NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL, the very leagues people are betting on. Today, mega operators like FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, and Bet365 have honed their systems with psychological precision to the point where even a casual $5 bet with friends can quickly drag someone into a downward spiral of despair. The industry is bigger than ever and growing at an unprecedented pace. Because remember that $148 billion wagered in 2024 that I mentioned earlier? That was a 23% increase over the previous year.
Why now? Why this book right now?
I mean, I think we're at a point of what I would call a public health crisis, where young men in particular are losing more money than they can afford, or in worst cases, developing full-blown gambling addictions and thoughts of suicide.
So all of this chaos really kicked off with the 2006 Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act I mentioned earlier. The law cracked down on online gambling by making it a criminal offense for financial firms in the US to process payments to or from gambling and betting sites. In other words, it made running any online gambling operation nearly impossible, as they now couldn't move money through any banks. But there was, of course, one thing that slipped through the cracks. The law exempted, quote, participation in any fantasy or simulation sports game or educational game or contest, reasoning that, quote, all winning outcomes reflect the relative knowledge and skill of the participants. That distinction, banning games of chance while greenlighting fantasy games of skill, opened the door for everything that came next. To be fair to the lawmakers, they didn't have the benefit of hindsight that we have now. Back then, these fantasy games ran for an entire season and were pretty casual. You'd set up a league with friends, draft your team, tweak your lineup each week, and winners would take home a modest prize. It was more of a fun game than anything else. But as with all good things, this didn't last long. As more and more companies spotted the opportunity in the loophole, the limits began stretching far beyond what any lawmaker could have expected. In 2009, FanDuel launched, and they had a new idea: scrap the season-long format, focus on game-by-game contests, and shift toward more public rather than private leagues. Fans can now duel other fans, just as the name suggests. The new system worked like this. Users would pay an entry fee to join a contest for a single day or game, picking players they expected to perform best. Entry fees ranged from a couple dollars to hundreds of dollars, depending on the contest and the prize pool. Then 90% of the total collected from entry fees went to the prize pool, and the remaining 10%, well, the companies, of course, wanted their cut. The key here isn't just that the prizes were getting larger, but that the contests were now fast and repeatable. Join one, finish, join another, and repeat. By the mid-2010s, FanDuel and DraftKings' ambitions had grown, and they wanted to solidify their presence in the sports ecosystem. To do that, they took the following steps. They started by funding studies to see if their contests were in fact skills-based and fully legal, and surprise, surprise, The studies said yes. Then, by leveraging this cover and their now massive user base, they were able to partner directly with major sports leagues. DraftKings with MLB in 2013, FanDuel with the NBA in 2014, and several NFL teams with FanDuel in 2015, fully cementing these brands' place in the industry as the leagues themselves now had enough stake to root for their success. But even still, there was one piece of the puzzle remaining. While big as the industry had grown, it was still constrained by the UIGEA and the 1992 PASPA Act. Operators couldn't offer every type of game or market their apps freely. While they had pushed the limits, the law still kept a tight lock on what was actually possible. In the spring of 2018, the state of New Jersey, led by then Governor Chris Christie and later Phil Murphy, challenged PASPA. New Jersey argued that this prohibition violated the 10th Amendment by blocking states from making their own laws. And quite surprisingly to many, on May 14, 2018, the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 in New Jersey's favor. PASPA was struck down, and sports betting officially became a state issue.
States and gaming companies can now legally allow betting on sports.
This was the moment. The floodgates had opened, and almost immediately, brands like FanDuel were acquired by even larger players with deeper pockets, eager to expand from fantasy into full-blown sports betting. Nearly all of the brands shifted from just fantasy to now allowing users to bet on anything sports-related. The next touchdown scored, who would be the first to score, halftime score, and all the micro events you can imagine. From there, legalization spread like wildfire as states tried to keep up and not lose out on the extra tax revenue. Hundreds of billions of dollars were poured into aggressive advertising campaigns, nonstop promos, ruthless psychological tactics, and all with almost no oversight. By 2023, over 30 states had legalized sports betting, and that same year, the industry overtook traditional casinos in total bets wagered. So that's the story. But of course, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know we don't stop there. We always have to dig a little bit deeper. And right now, it's more timely than ever to do exactly that, because there's one detail here that just doesn't add up. If you paid close attention during the rise of sports betting I just walked through, you'll have noticed something. The hard part for these companies was just to get into the market and legalize it. Once the betting companies got their foot in the door, everything else seemed to just click into place. The growth seemed almost effortless and automatic whenever they entered a new state. But this is strange, and there has to be a reason behind it. You see, over the years, they've built and perfected a formula that drives their entire business operation. It's one that's built on the nature of the human brain and some clever financial tricks. Now, sure, a lot of this is simply built on the standard gambling format everybody knows. First, an opportunity to win. Second, an unpredictable reward. And finally, quick repeatability. But while this is true in some sense and definitely forms the core of their formula, much more has been added in recent years. And our beloved sports betting companies in particular have taken it several steps further. In fact, if you've been anywhere online these last few years, you've probably seen it.
Placing money lines in real time.
$200 instantly, just for betting $5.
To turn wins into bigger wins.
I put $1 million in up to 5 DraftKings sportsbook accounts.
The ads, the language, the hooks, free, bonus, risk-free, deposit 50, play with 500. The companies are aware that the original 3-step system isn't enough anymore. People are too cautious and they know the basic tricks. So as a result, the marketing and the overall operations sophistication had to evolve. Let's take a closer look at these so-called risk-free bets that so many now offer. The marketing for this one is highly persuasive and very successful at pulling in new users. And that's pretty understandable. After all, risk-free gambling sounds like heaven, right? It covers the biggest fear most people have, which is the risk itself. But sadly, as is often the case, it isn't nearly as great as it sounds. In fact, it's not even close. Sure, if you join through one of these campaigns, you'd likely get one round where you could bet, lose, and still get your money back. But the trick is, you wouldn't just get the money back ready for withdrawal. No, instead what happens is that you often receive it back in the form of a bonus credit. And if you want to turn this credit into real money again, well, then you need to have placed 5, 10, 15, or sometimes 20 more bets to withdraw. These clever tricks are a theme throughout the rest of the claims they make in their marketing, which all seem like a steal. Let me give you another example. Here's the classic deposit 50, play with 500 claim. You might actually get $450 in bonus credit to bet with, but it's not like you're signing up and than instantly getting 10 times your money as you might think. Because just like in the previous example, you often have to place 5, 10, 15, or even 20 bets before you can even think about withdrawing. This is what makes modern sports betting so successful. These claims attract swarms of users with huge guarantees and seemingly free money, but they're carefully designed so that you're more likely to lose most of the money in the process of trying to withdraw, or even see it vanish completely. Meaning the result is really just that you might walk away with nothing, or worse, a loss, while the betting company has successfully nudged you deeper into their funnel. A funnel designed to create a behavioral trap, and one that makes it far more likely that you will keep betting real money afterwards when the losses are 100% real. But these tricks don't stop at marketing and user acquisition. Once someone has been turned into a regular user, the betting companies then also take clear steps to make sure the odds are stacked against you, ensuring that on a broader level, they're the ones making the big money. To give you an understandable example of one of their favorite tricks to pull, let's look at this bet. Say you place a $110 bet on a 50-50 chance. You might expect to win double if you're right. After all, that would seem fair. But no, that's not often how it's done. Instead, they reduce the potential win from $110 profit to $100, taking out $10. This might not seem like a big deal, but in the bigger picture, it can have a substantial effect. By taking out that small difference, otherwise known as a $10 VIG, they drastically reduce their overall exposure. And when you consider the scale of this happening across millions of bets, we're talking about hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars saved on their end. And if someone eventually stumbles upon a win, maybe even a big one, even that isn't too dangerous for the house. Not only because of the previous example, but also because of the simple fact that when a user hits big, they get that infamous dopamine rush. And in that euphoric state, many bettors make the all too faithful decision to keep playing. While some may remain lucky, or in this case, exceptionally lucky, the odds are still very much stacked against them. Typically, if they keep going long enough, those winnings will eventually go back to the house. And if they, against all odds, stay lucky, they're likely to talk about that win with their friends and family, which essentially turns them into an extremely effective organic marketing tool. The people this marketing tool brings in will likely make up for the difference of the losses. So if we take a step back for a second, we can clearly see that these sports betting companies have honed both their marketing and operations to perfection. They've fine-tuned every detail to get you in and keep you there, taking as much as possible in the process. They've also established themselves and seem to have cemented their place within the sports industry. They work the leagues, they work the clubs, and they work the players.
But think about if you could get all your homies rich by telling them, yo, bet $10,000 on my under, this one game I'm gonna act like I got an injury. I'm gonna come out after 3 minutes. And they all get a little bag because you did it one game. Like, that is so not okay, but some people probably think like that. They come from nothing and 100%. All their homies have nothing. 100%. But the whole sports gambling entity, bro, it's bad, and it's only gonna get worse, bro. Like we really do get death threats.
Their tentacles have truly gone everywhere. And this is where I want to take a moment to look ahead, and I also invite you to consider what the current path might hold for us in the future. Last year, North Carolina and Vermont joined the list of states legalizing sports betting, and in 2025, several more, including Georgia, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Texas have begun some process towards legalization. More markets and more lives, all open for the taking. We already know the damage gambling causes, and we know how powerful its system and influence are. That said, I'm all for the free market, and I'm not suggesting a total ban on gambling. After all, it's been around for forever in countless forms. In fact, the idea of gambling is as close to the human nature as procrastination, and no matter what we do, gambling will continue. However, with the way gambling is being integrated into our fast-paced and increasingly manipulative online world, something may need to be done. Since the 2018 court ruling we discussed earlier, regulation has been minimal at best. I fear that if action isn't taken, the financial and social consequences for our society, which have already been devastating, could be outright horrific. That's my opinion, but I also want to hear what you think. Should something be done? Should a line be drawn in the stand? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, YouTube also thinks you might like this video. Let's see if they're right.